Thank you. Thank you very much. Welcome to the regular meeting of council. It's a light and stormy night out there, a bright and stormy night. We had an earlier public hearing, which in a minute I'm going to ask that we bring that item forward on the agenda. But I'd like to call the meeting to order and acknowledge again that we are on the traditional territories of the Straits and Coast Salish peoples, the Lekwungen-speaking people, who are today known as the Esquimalt and Saanich First Nations, and whose connection to the land continue to this day. The meeting here is video recorded, and where we archive it in case you want to come back and relive the moments for tonight. So with that, I'm going to call the meeting to order and ask for a motion to amend the current agenda, which will allow the item number 18, which is the public hearing item, to be considered first, please.
So moved.
Second.
Moved, seconded. So we're going to amend it to bring that forward and discussion. All in favor? Opposed? No one opposed. Thank you. So we're going to turn to number 18 as the first item. This is now for third reading of the particular bylaw, which we held a public hearing on. So if we could have a motion, and then that will allow us to hold a discussion.
Move third reading.
Moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. Do you want to lead off? Councillor Murdoch, please.
If I may, through you, Chair, there was a comment made at the public hearing that I just wanted some clarification from staff on, if I may. And that was just, the comment was that it was a combination of RS5 and RS2 zoning currently, and this is moving to an RS5 lot, or an RS4 and RS2. My understanding is this area is all RS4 and RS5. Is that correct, or are there other RS zones within this area?
There are a number of other zones in the area. The bulk that's immediately around the property is RS4.
Thank you. And in terms of comments, I thought it was nice to see the turnout and comments made at the public hearing today. I think we all heard loud and clear the country lane feel of that is it a paramount to maintaining, and the question was whether or not this subdivision would have a potentially negative impact on that. I am somewhat comforted with the fact that with this kind of subdivision, we do have control over character and form when it comes to the house being proposed on that lot in future. At this point, I'm reasonably comfortable with the application being made as is.
Okay, thank you. I have, just before anyone else speaks, I just have a clarification in terms of the approval process for a house on the new lot. And what, if any, controls we may have over siting to ensure that trees are protected to the best extent possible. Ms. Jensen, are you going to answer that one?
There are a number of options for moving forward with the siting of the proposed house. Staff, as part of the rezoning application, are recommending a covenant be put on the property that would establish a building envelope that they could construct the house within that general area. Moving forward, if council did decide to adopt the zoning bylaw, another option is that through subdivision, we would also be looking to establish that building envelope as well for protection of the trees. And finally, because it is going through a rezoning process, they would be subject to the infill residential development permit area, and we would be looking at siting design of the home through that process.
So I gather it will come back to council at some point on one of those methods in order for us to determine siting and tree protection as a result.
That is correct.
All right. So, and at this point, you don't need any directions for a covenant, I take it then? Okay, thank you. Now, that was my question. Thank you very much, Ms. Jensen. Any other comments? No comments, no comments. Okay, we're ready for the question then. All in favor? Opposed? No one opposed. Thank you very much. And it'll now come back to the next council meeting, believe in 12th of June. Oh, no, sorry. Was it? Yes.
Thank you, Your Worship. There are some items that have been committed to, and staff will work towards addressing those. Once those have been committed to, the bylaw will be back before you.
And that's for adoption or also known as final reading? Thank you very much. Thank you. Now we're going to go back to item 1 and then walk through the agenda as it was otherwise proposed. And we have the minutes and reports of meetings. We have council meeting for May the 8th. There'll be a motion to adopt. Approved. Thank you. Discussion. Was there a seconder? Yes, thank you. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Next one is Committee of the Whole from May 15th.
Move adoption.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? No one opposed. Thank you. Special council meetings. We can do this as a threesome, May 8th, 11th, and 15th, please.
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? No one opposed. My remarks. I had the privilege this weekend of attending on our community's behalf and council's behalf at the unveiling of a historic site plaque at the Union Club. I was asked to speak very much in part because Oak Bay has a very strong connection to that club through its third reeve or third mayor, Francis Rattenberry. He was a founder of the club in the late 1890s, and he was instrumental in putting that building together. He was on a selection committee to choose an architect, which interestingly enough was not him. And he oversaw the planning and construction of that facility. And over the weekend, it was recognized for its heritage value. We had representatives from the federal government as well as our MP was there. So very great event. The second item is just to alert everybody who hasn't already noticed it. The Arts Alive for 2017 is indeed alive. We see some of the pieces already being installed, and they'll be installed over the next little while. And I don't, Ms. Barkley is here. When do you think the installation will be complete?
I had to through you, the chair, I had to confer with the expert here, but by the end of the next 2 weeks, for sure.
And some very exciting pieces, and they'll continue and to be exciting as they go in. I've already had lots of feedback on some of them. So thanks to our Arts Laureate for that. I want to bring your attention to and congratulate the Oak Bay Tourism. They recently released a new self-guided walking tour showing where different places are in the community. I do notice that the absence of Municipal Hall on the map, because I thought that might be an exciting tourist attraction, but perhaps not. Thank you very much. The next item is a thank you note from the Oak Bay High School grads. They had their annual block party, and they certainly appreciated the support of our community. You know, we blocked off the street so the kids could have a safe and not a reunion because they're not starting that yet, but a party to begin their celebrations for the grad night. And finally, we have a letter from the Oak Bay Bowling Club. Quite a number of us were out and participated in the annual first day, the launch of that, and we got a nice letter thanking me and the councillors who attended, and also recognizing the ongoing support of our Parks, Recreation and Culture Commission and our staff. So the parks and the bowling greens are in excellent condition, and it was a well-attended event, and so they passed on their special thanks. All righty. The next item shows on our agenda is the introduction of the Deputy Police Chief, who was recently appointed, Ray Bernardes. We're going to put that over till the 12th of June, where we have a joint meeting with the Police Board and Council, and he will be presented there and will be joining us there. So I don't think we need anything other than just me deferring that, right? Thank you. Now, item number 6 is public participation period. This is a 20-minute period where we invite people to come forward, state their name, their community, and I think there's a form on the podium to write it out, so we'll make sure we have the correct spelling. And keep your remarks to 3 minutes or under, and address comments to us on a topic that relates to Oak Bay. I have a little iPhone here, which when I welcome the speaker, I will start the 3 minutes, and when you hear the dulcet tones of on the iPhone 6, I'd ask you just to finish up wherever you are. And I note the time is now 19:11. We have 20 minutes. Thank you. First speaker, please.
There's 3 names ahead, but there's a line, so it looks like they've already spoke.
Yeah, that was from the public hearing.
Very good.
So you're the first below the line.
I am a below the line, not like a budget. I want to be above the line.
All right. Name?
My name is Fred Blue.
Mr. Blue, welcome.
Thank you. Your Worship and Honorable Council members, my name is Fred Blue. I live at 3025 Cadborough Bay Road. With my wife, Toby, and our 4 young children, we bought our home almost 3 years ago. The property included a recently constructed accessory building that was part of the original purchase. I've provided some pictures that you can refer to later that outlines that. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss an important topic. The issue that I am seeking your help deals with the topic of the acceptable use of accessory buildings. But first, it's important for me to provide you some background about our daycare and my incredible wife. Toby owns and operates Seedlings Daycare, also known as Seedlings, in our home. Seedlings provides care to 8 children between the ages of 1-year-old and 5 years old. We have 1 employee, a certified early childhood educator who manages the daycare on a daily basis. Seedlings is an Island Health Authority licensed multi-age daycare. Seedlings is a licensed business, within the District of Oak Bay. Seedlings complies with all of Oak Bay's bylaw requirements. Toby directly and personally provides care for the children every day they are at Seedlings. She's there every morning to welcome the kids at drop-off. She's there in the afternoon at pickup time. She ensures that the children and educator have everything they need, which includes food, cleaning supplies, toys and books, learning materials, first aid supplies, etc. Without question, Toby provides personal care within Seedlings. In addition to Seedlings, Toby works full-time as an educator and assistant head of an independent school. She has over 30 years' experience working with children in the education field. She is highly regarded in the education community. Take a moment and look her up. Plus, she always has time for our 4 growing children. Oh, and sometimes she has time for us. Now to the issue that requires your assistance. We are seeking a recommendation from Council to modify the wording of accessory building usage within zoning bylaw 3531. In the short term, we are seeking a further recommendation to amend the bylaw for accessory building usage in a full-time capacity through business hours. In our specific situation, our accessory building is better suited to handle the program offerings that Seedlings provide the children than within our 1912 home. It is without question a better overall space, in other words, fit for purpose, safety, meeting the needs of the educator and children alike. The OCP provides the necessary wording that applies to businesses and accessory building usage. Page 63 and 64 of the OCP indicates that discussions have occurred and that plans have been approved to change the bylaw to allow for greater flexibility. Also, on page 92 of the OCP, it clearly specifies the need for a more flexible definition of home-based businesses. Shortly, I am recommending that Council makes a small, meaningful change so that the Blue Clan, the Seedlings families, and the broader Oak Bay community can benefit overall. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Blue. Any other speakers? I think we've just heard about you, so
Yeah,
you,
I'm
you
totally.
come with quite an introduction.
I think I needed to debrief with him afterwards. Thank you for having me. My name's Toby Blue.
Welcome, Ms. Blue.
Thank you. Your Worship, Mayor Jensen, and council members, and staff members and team, thank you for allowing me to come to speak tonight. My name is Toby Blue. I'm the owner and licensee of Seedlings Daycare at 3025 Cadborough Bay Road. We would ask that council consider our situation and urge you and Oak Bay staff to seek the new definition of accessory buildings usage according to Bylaw 3531. The current definition of accessory buildings impacts many residents of Oak Bay and also out of date when referenced against Oak Bay's official community plan. The change that we are requesting to Bylaw 3531 to permit home-based businesses to operate from accessory buildings is something that the community of Oak Bay has already contemplated and approved. The accessory building on our property is where we would like to run the Seedlings Daycare program. The accessory building has been permitted by municipality of Oak Bay and it meets all building code. So our reason for asking for this is for two simple reasons. One, safety for our children, and two, educational programming. It's a better space. Island Health Authority, who have licensed us, have stated that their preference is also that Seedlings resides in the accessory building for the simple reason of safety considerations for our children. When comparing the 1912 construction of our home, where Seedlings currently resides, the 9-year-old accessory building is clearly a better choice. In the interest of making positive change for our community, however, the bylaw places undue restrictions on many homeowners in Oak Bay. Currently, accessory buildings may only be used for the garage, carport, tool shed, greenhouse, gazebo, or enclosed swimming pool. This means that technically a homeowner can't even use it to paint or create art or listen to music. I venture that many homeowners in Oak Bay would be surprised to learn that creating art in their own accessory building is actually contravening their bylaw, our bylaw 3531. Similarly, though homeowners are permitted to run a home-based business in their principal residence, they are not permitted to do this in their accessory building. All these activities create no more disruption if run from either space in their property, on their property rather. Seedlings offers a structured, high-quality educational program. We know we are an essential service to Oak Bay. We have perfect scores on our inspection reports, and I have, from here, a list of over 75 families. Oops, upside down, but there it is. It's well used. And I would say that we have little to no impact on our neighbors, as supported from some letters I'll submit in a moment. In terms of noise, traffic, or parking, our parking is on site. The noise is very limited. Our children travel to other outside outlying parks, and our traffic is very intermittent through certain times. Our neighboring municipalities also offer inclusive bylaws that I think we should consider in Sydney, Saanich, Colwood, and the Victoria bylaws. With this meaningful change to a bylaw, moving Seedlings into a more suitable space for our young active minds to learn and grow, this will change and make a greater learning environment. And we can also help our neighbors to access their buildings in a more inclusive community.
Thank you.
Thank you for considering.
Thank you, Ms. Blue. Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hello, my name is Sarah Pretty.
Ms. Pretty.
My son,
Welcome.
thank you, sorry. My son Levi, who turns 2
Okay,
in
and let
July.
me just ask you to say what community you live
Oh,
in.
pardon me, sorry, I'm in Victoria.
Okay, no problem. And just make sure before you leave, you put your spelling and of your name there.
I will, it's already on
Oh,
the
it's
list,
already
yes.
there. Oh, thank you.
Proactive,
Okay,
yeah.
now I say welcome.
Okay, thank you. My son Levi, who turns 2 in July, attends Seedlings Daycare, and I'm also hoping that I have a 2-week-old daughter who hopefully next year when she turns 1 and I go back to work will also attend Seedlings. Following on Toby and Fred and their comments, I have two things I want to speak about and add to. One is the scarcity of licensed daycares in our community and the quality of the Seedlings program. Like many communities, Oak Bay, I would say, is in the middle of a childcare crisis. In particular, finding care for children under the age of 2.5 is incredibly difficult. Based on my research, there are currently only 2 licensed in-home daycares in Oak Bay that accept infants. That's a total of 6 spaces for the, I don't know how many hundreds of babies that are born in just Oak Bay alone every year, because each licensed daycare that's in-home can only take 3 infants. My husband and I experienced the scarcity of infant spaces available in licensed daycares when we were looking for care for our son. We actually began our search before he was even born. That's what we were told we had to do, and it was no joke. We had his name on every list we could possibly find for every licensed daycare in Oak Bay, Saanich, Victoria, Esquimalt. And despite all of these efforts, 3 months before I was due to return to work, we still had not gotten a single call from any daycare saying that they had a space for our son. We found Seedlings purely by chance. I was scouring used Victoria out of desperation for nannies, and I came across Toby's posting saying that a daycare was opening. This was actually the only option available to us. This is not a experience that is unique to us. All of my friends and parents that I work with and other parents in the community have expressed very similar experiences in terms of trying to find quality childcare. So just to sort of drive home the point that there's really a childcare crisis in our community right now. Fortunately for us, the only option that was available to us has turned out to be the most amazing daycare. Our son is thriving there. He absolutely loves to go to school, which is what we call it. And that's because of the program that Toby has put together, along with her family and Angela, who's the head teacher there. They have dance and music classes. They go on field trips to all of the various parks that Oak Bay has to offer. They do preschool learning, gardening, and so many more other activities. Toby has very successfully, in the short year that Seedlings has been opened, created a community for us parents and our children. When I was pregnant and taking my son to and from daycare every day, Toby would often see me coming, run and pick Levi up and take him inside for me, and likewise at the end of the day. Just little things like that created very much like a family-oriented environment. So I hope you will consider the changes. I had a lot more to say, but obviously no more time. But I hope you will consider
I think we got the gist.
the changes that I've been asking for. And just to close to say, it's the most amazing daycare. It would be a shame,
Okay.
and I and my son would be devastated.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Hi, Lori McKenzie, Oak Bay.
Ms. McKenzie, welcome.
Thank you. So I'm also a parent of a little seedling. My husband and I live in Oak Bay with our 2 teens who will be attending Oak Bay High in the fall. And we also have a 3-year-old. In 2003, we moved to Oak Bay. I was pregnant and we had a toddler. And in 2004, we began our quest to look for childcare. And I'll tell you, nothing's changed. In 2015, we started our quest in very familiar territory looking for childcare, and it was a massive struggle. And as any parent knows, this is a very stressful transition for a family, and especially for a mother. And poor little Hunter went through 4 different caregivers from the age of 1 to the age of 24 months. And this is just not ideal, and it's not acceptable in our community. We just happened across Seedlings, just like Sarah did, and it's been the most amazing experience. Seedlings is not only it's not only a community for our children, it's a community for the parents, for our families, and I'm very proud that this is a service in our community. We don't have a system here in Oak Bay or any other community for early years. 0 to 6 is a very vulnerable time for children, and we do know that an investment in their early years will support our children for years to come in terms of their health, their well-being, their mental health, their ability to connect with their members of the community, and to be successful in terms of their career. So I'm appealing to you to recognize the quality of the program and understand that the space is very important. We know that space is important. Research tells us that. And the accessory building is our seedlings' home away from home. And it's beautiful space. It's conducive to learning. And Angela and Toby have done such an amazing job at developing this program and continuing to provide an educationally sound, safe, healthy, pro-social, resiliency building program for our children. And not to allow it to exist in this accessory building would be a huge mistake. We know that Oak Bay Council, it does not have full jurisdiction over childcare in this province. And in fact, it's a multi-jurisdictional problem, and it is also a problem for our society. So you do have an option here, and that is to consider a change to this bylaw. And so again, just another voice supporting Toby and Fred, and understanding that these children are connected to our community, and you can't do anything better for children at this age. So thank you.
Thanks, Ms. McKenzie. Appreciate your input. Next speaker, please.
Hello.
Is this Seedlings Night?
Yep. How'd you guess? Larissa Russell, Oak Bay.
Ms. Russell, welcome.
Thank you. So again, you probably could guess, I'm here to support Seedlings Daycare. I have a 2-year-old daughter, Everly, that goes to the daycare. Aside from that, my family has lived in Oak Bay for nearly 6 decades. Everly is a 3rd-generation Oak Bay resident. After we had her, we felt that it was very important that she be raised in the same community and attend all the great places that I got to go when I was little. Of course, in Victoria right now, the economic climate is much different now than when I was little. It wasn't financially feasible for me or my husband to stay at home with her after my maternity leave was up. Pretty much immediately after Everly was born, much like Sarah mentioned, we started looking for daycares right away. We quickly realized what we were up against. Many daycares had wait lists so long they wouldn't even take our names. Other daycares, although they appeared safe, were not ideal environments for learning for our Everly. Because of the immense demand for quality care, we were certainly out of luck to find any daycares in or near Oak Bay that had any room at all. After months and months of searching without any success, we conceded to the idea that we may have to travel not only out of our community of Oak Bay, but out of Victoria to find a vacancy. We even considered that we might have to move out of Oak Bay. It was upsetting for me to think that Everly wouldn't be able to spend her young years enjoying the community that I so much enjoyed growing up. And then one day, early one morning, I saw an ad on News Victoria and called Toby at a ridiculously early time because I was so excited to see that there was a daycare opening in Oak Bay. After contacting Toby, she graciously invited us to tour the daycare. We arrived to the accessory building where Seedlings was going to be operating. We were totally overwhelmed. The place is beautiful. It was bright, spacious, very clean, very safe. There's no TVs to distract the children, just toys, crafts, even science experiments. It was perfect. It exceeded all of our expectations of where we could only dream of taking Everly. We very much appreciated that it was in a building separate from the home and capable of contributing a very safe, dedicated space for the young minds to be in it. Since being at Seedlings in September 2016, Everly has grown in leaps and bounds. We have been continuously impressed with the level of care she receives at Seedlings with regard to the thoughtfully planned program and its curriculum. Throughout my workday now, I get sent pictures of Everly with her little seedling friends playing at Willows Beach, seeing the ducks at Bowker Creek, and running around Fireman's Park, just like I did. This municipality holds an opportunity to make changes reflecting the evolving needs and values of Oak Bay families and to brighten the futures of the youngest members of our community. By updating Bylaw 3531 to ensure Seedlings can operate out of its intended space in the accessory building, it will not only serve the current families on this essential care, but it will allow Seedlings to pave the way for future high-quality daycares in Oak Bay.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Now, just before we have see another person coming, I don't know, you're on Seedlings too? Because I did see a woman standing by the door who had kind of come to the microphone second or third. And
well, I didn't realize there was a list, so I didn't put my name on the list, so I'll follow the process.
well, I think, are you a non-seedling?
I'm a non-seedling.
And it's just that I think we've got the idea on the seedling front. I don't know if you would cede your time to the person who's come forward on the non-seedling issue. Is there any other seedling speakers? No? Okay, so are there any other speakers? Okay, so with council's indulgence, no other speakers tonight? Okay, we're kind of at our 20 minutes, which is rare, because we usually get finished in one or two speakers. But so I don't know if you wanted to cede your time to the non-seed spelled differently. Give over your time. Sorry, didn't mean a pun, to the non-seedling speaker. Could we do that?
No, I can do that. I'm passionate about this, but I want to be respectful to the
Okay.
council's time. So if you feel you've heard.
We've heard passion. Yep.
Yeah, so I'll be brief. I'm Louise Lalonde. I live in Oak Bay, and
Could
I
you
just
turn that
it
microphone down, Ms. Lalonde, please?
Yeah, for short people. And I'll make a plug for the seedling thing, which is that my kids are in their late 20s now, and I don't think anything has really changed. It's incredibly difficult to find good daycare, and I think if we have providers that are good, we should just do it. We should go forth. Anyway.
Welcome.
What I wanted to just speak briefly about is I just wanted to reflect a bit on the process that we went through for the Bowker development. And I just think it's be interesting to think about how do we deal with big developments like that in the future. I realize that decision's been made. And I guess what struck me a lot about the process or just how things unfolded is that it seemed to get almost a little bit positional. And when I look at the official community plan, there's a lot of very broad statements. There's also some guidelines around building in that zone, in that particular format of commercial residential mixed. And I understand there's guidelines around, you either provide a setback or you set back over the second level. And I don't know if those discussions happened in the process. I certainly wasn't involved in the detail, and there's other guidelines. So really, I'm just really here tonight to make a bit of a plea for how do we deal with those situations in the future, because I think that, as a community, clearly there's a lot of interest, and I think that there's ways of looking at and thinking about adjacent neighborhoods to, have better transitions. So I just hope that we can, as a district, work a bit better together in that regard on future developments. So and that's the end of my plug.
Thank you very much,
Just
Ms.
put my
Lalonde.
name on here, so it's.
Appreciate it. And that completes the public participation period. Oh, I thought you went like this. I'm sorry, James. I thought you went like that you wouldn't. If I could, I would appreciate it. Well, let's just see. What's the will of council? So we hear one more? Given we got over seedling tonight. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Sultan, please.
Very quickly, I really appreciate your worship and council. First of all, it's very interesting. I would like to support seedling. This points out that we really need to prioritize zoning. This is a very important issue. I think they have a good point. But I'd like to talk to item number 9, which is the report by the Director of Engineering. It's about a grant application. I just would like to clarify that this is the grant has 2 streams. One is for capital. It's about asset management, but it has another stream which is for capacity building. Capacity building, actually, in the asset management lingo, is for asset management, for an asset management plan, which is one of your priorities. If you go through the 2017-2018 priority plan, is your priority. So what I would request is that council consider recommend staff to also apply for under this capacity building category. I know that staff is busy. But I also know that it's an incredible opportunity to turn the planning piece of asset management a priority. This time is of the essence. The deadline is June 1st, but what if you create a task group or have a grant writer do it. Like there's a week or so to do it, but Oak Bay has the information available. You've applied for other grants, similar grants. It's a matter of compiling information. The director of engineer did his share, applying for those 2 capital grants, and congratulations for that. The money will go towards the upland sewer, $6 million, but this other piece, capacity building, is more overreaching planning, which goes above and beyond the engineering department. This will be absolutely important. It's a document. A plan would help the municipality move forward and make decisions regarding asset management, which is exactly what we need. We got the reports from those 2 consultants. We know the state of the art of the assets that we have. What we need to do, we need how much money roughly we need to spend over the next 10, 20 years. The asset management plan would help you, council and staff, on how to go about setting priorities and what the impact will be in terms of allocating money, how much and when. So I think it's the natural next step. So I would kindly request council to consider that. Thank you.
Now, thank you very much, Mr. Sultanan. Is it the will of council to hear the last seedling? I take it there's no other speakers. The leftover seedling, would she come forward?
The left.
We're going to hear from one more.
Thank you very much.
Name?
My name is Erin Shardlow, and I'm from Saanich East. Thank you. I wanted to start by saying how much I respect and admire the heritage of Oak Bay, even though I don't live here currently. I want to be part of protecting the heritage while still finding a way to adapt to the changing landscape of the community that supports daycares, which are necessary for young families if they are to thrive here. Because we were lucky enough to find a space in Seedlings, I'm now connected to Oak Bay more than I ever was before. I have my hair done here. I frequent the local children's stores as well as the independent coffee shops. My daughter Isabel just turned 2 years old, and she's been at Seedlings for over a year. I'm passionate about my daughter's education and social well-being, as every parent is. Seedlings is a daycare which provides an exceptional learning and play environment for Isabel and the other children. Trust in your daycare provider is paramount. And these are the people that help raise your children. They're with them over 40 hours a week. I trust Toby and Angela implicitly, as they have showed themselves to go above and beyond time again and illustrate their dedication to the children. Toby was so supportive in supporting our daughter's food sensitivities that she reworked the meal plan, and she purchases special food for our daughter so she can eat alongside the other children. She amended the curriculum to add a gluten-free baking day so that my daughter could also participate. Your daycare becomes an extension of your family in a way. They share your bumps and bruises, your triumphs and successes. When Isabel comes home speaking a new word, it wasn't because she learned it on TV. It's because she learned it from Toby or Angela taking the time to create an experiment growing plants, or on their trips to Carnarvon as they explain the world around them. I wanted to expand on the idea of how difficult it is to find daycare spot in Victoria, let alone a spot with exceptional, like Seedlings. Touring daycare after daycare while trying to find a spot for Isabel, I was dismayed by the lack of quality programs. Most are run out of dark basements, and they left me with the impression of just filling the time until the end of the day. These places still had a wait list for 1 year or more for a single spot. So the choice came to be just find any available spot, regardless of proximity or entertaining such laughable luxury issues as educational programming or finding a spot with similar parenting styles and philosophies. We are extremely lucky to have found the latter at Seedlings. I will add that out of necessity, I kept my daughter on wait lists at other daycares as we were uncertain of the future of this, and a year and a half later, we have still not been offered a spot at over the 10 daycares that we are on wait lists for. We need to spend our time and energy applauding and helping other operators, such as Toby, who have the courage, ability, and caring to open a daycare to allow the rest of us to be able to work and support our families as we go to work. The model that she has created is truly above the standard. And this is where I put my trust into you to help us find a way to create an infrastructure that supports young families and keep this exceptional daycare opening and running in the outbuilding.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for allowing me to speak at the end.
And we might deal with this later on in another aspect of our agenda. Thank you. We're now going to move on to a presentation from the City of Victoria regarding the from the Royal McPherson Theatre Society to do with the McPherson. And we're delighted and honored to have two councillors from another jurisdiction join us, Councillor Marianne Alto and Pam Madoff here. Well, you're both here, but only one's coming forward. We understand that you have given this presentation to others, that we were not your first.
Unfortunately not. But this does mark a first because this is actually my first time in your council chamber.
So I think we might have seen Ms. Alto here before one time, yes. So welcome, a very special welcome.
Thank you very much.
And as soon as we get that hooked up, I think there was a loose wire. We kept seeing purple.
That's always a good sign. Looking good so far.
Right?
We okay? Okay, thank you very much.
Well, welcome, Councillor.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mayor Jensen and members of council, staff, and members of the public. It's really a pleasure to be here this evening representing the City of Victoria and the Royal McPherson Theatre Society. It's my pleasure this evening to introduce the delegation.
Just a minute. Could we just, if people want to speak, it'd be really nice if they could speak outside, because I'm having some difficulty hearing this. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Jensen. My pleasure to introduce the delegation. As you mentioned, I'm here with my colleague, Councillor Marianne Alto. Marianne is the current representative on the Royal McPherson Board, and I have just stepped down in that role. I'm also joined by Byron Smith, who is the past president of the board, and Mr. Randy Joint, who is our manager of external relations. So the next person who will be up presenting will be Randy, who will walk us through the presentation. Councillor Alto will close, and then if you have questions, we're all here available to answer them for you. But again, I just really wanted to thank you for allowing us to have this opportunity to make the presentation.
It feels a little theatrical, which is appropriate, I suppose.
Well, it does. And I know I started thinking I should probably say I'm a seedling as well, but I'm a wannabe seedling. I think I'd like to be in that daycare.
We could give you 3 extra minutes if you say that.
So I think it would be worth it. Thank you very much, and I'd like to introduce Randy Joint.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Madoff, and to Mayor Jensen and to Council, thanks for making time for us on the agenda this evening. So our purpose is to provide some thoughts about the direction of the region's historic theaters and hopefully engage you in a conversation about the future of the theaters. I want to start by, we have a little PowerPoint show to go along with it. I want to start by pointing out a quote on this first page. It's from a woman named Janice Barlow. Janice is one of the foremost theater consultants in North America, and we worked with her a couple of years ago to do a strategic business planning study. She came away impressed with the state of the theaters and also by their direction, so we wanted to highlight that as a starting point. Some background on the theaters. The McPherson Playhouse was built in 1914. It's a 772-seat theater that is incredibly versatile. The McPherson is equally at home hosting community school groups, events like TEDx, to the most sophisticated touring musical productions. Then there's the Royal Theatre. I know you're familiar with the Royal Theatre. Built in 1913, it has 1,416 seats. It's the region's largest theatre, and it has been home throughout the years to Baryshnikov, Pavarotti, many, many others. It is well suited to large-scale ballet productions, to incredibly diverse musical events, etc. So it's a really valuable asset to the region. The McPherson Playhouse is owned by the City of Victoria, and its public support comes solely from the City of Victoria. The Royal Theatre is owned by the CRD, and its public support comes from Oak Bay, Saanich, and Victoria. Both of the theaters are managed by the Royal and McPherson Theatre Society, the organization I work for. We're a not-for-profit charitable organization that was founded in 1998. and it grew out of a previous iteration that had been around since the late 70s. Our governance structure is such that we have a council representative from each of the organizations with public support in the Royal Theatre. So we have Councillor Ney from your council on our board, a councillor from Saanich, Vicky Sanders, and then currently Councillor Alto from the City of Victoria. We have 3 to 5 directors that are appointed by the CRD, and we have 5 to 7 directors that are elected from the community at large. And the majority position on our board rests with the councillors and the CRD appointees. Some facts specific to the Royal Theatre. So you'll see you have been partners in the Royal Theatre since 1974, along with Saanich and Victoria, when the ownership of the theatre was transferred to the CRD. This partnership has been incredibly valuable, and it's allowed the upgrading and maintaining of the theatres to their current state-of-the-art fashion they are today. They're a really incredible example of the marriage between history and modern use in terms of their technical abilities. The partnership has been incredibly valuable to our cultural institutions like the Victoria Symphony Orchestra, Pacific Opera Victoria, Dance Victoria. This is the home theatre of those institutions, and it's been a catalyst for vitality throughout the region as well as economic impact. Some highlights about the McPherson specifically. Each year the McPherson Playhouse is provided at reduced rates to a host of not-for-profit organizations. Over 53,000 people attended a show at the McPherson Playhouse in 2016, and it is often an incubator theatre. Organizations get their start at the McPherson Playhouse before they move on to the Royal Theatre and touring productions. This next slide illustrates the balance between the not-for-profit and commercial use of the McPherson Playhouse every year. So you'll see it's skewed to the not-for-profit use. 80% of its days in use are from not-for-profit organizations, but its revenues are proportionally less on the not-for-profit side, and that is the discounts that are provided each year. So $95,000 of discounted rent was provided at the McPherson Playhouse in 2016, and over 22% of your residents attended a show at the McPherson Playhouse in 2016. The Royal Theatre also provided each year at below market value reduced rents to not-for-profit organizations. Over 125,000 people attended a show at the Royal Theatre in 2016. And as I said, it's really the home theatre of our cultural institutions. Very similar display of not-for-profit and commercial usage in terms of the balance. And over $300,000 of discounts were provided to local not-for-profit organizations, and 61.4% of your folks, your citizens, attended a show at the Royal Theatre in 2016. It's a very vibrant, economically important organization in the region. Over 230 employees work at the theatres, and of those employees, 42 of them live in Oak Bay. Currently, the theatres serve the entire region. They're really incredible assets for the entire region. Public investment in the theatres has been static since 1998, so those discounts I spoke about are becoming more challenging to provide each year. We know that one of the issues for performing arts organizations in the region is access. They need places to perform, and particularly the McPherson Playhouse has capacity and expertise to offer, and it's a real driver for our society is providing that access to local organizations. The two theatres have the structure, the management in place to operate as a single, operate the theatres as a single performing arts entity, a performing arts center, but ownership and funding isn't aligned. So that becomes something of a challenge. So as we move forward, that ownership piece of alignment and funding would allow the region to really realize the benefits of a integrated performing arts center. That being seeing the two stages operate in concert, where one could steward an artist's or an arts organization's path through their career from the incubator stage onto the full-fledged stage of the Royal Theatre. Governance would be simplified, and then we'd see efficiencies in terms of operations as well. So that's kind of the facts and figures point of the presentation. So at this point, I'm going to invite Councillor Alto up to finish for us. So thank you for your time.
So at least in my mind, I had one question for you, but do we want to circle back and after?
Do you mind? We'll do all the questions at the end?
Yep.
Very good.
Thank you.
And that'll have to come down a little bit.
Yes. Don't remind me. Yes, that's true. Thank you very much.
And you have to stand fairly close, because otherwise people who are watching at home won't, or watching our archives won't be able to hear you. Thank you.
Thank you. Just in closing, and before we go to questions and hopefully answers, I just wanted to reiterate, really one of the purposes of this process for us is to look at how we can actually build on the success of the model of management, operation, and oversight that the Royal enjoys by being a joint partnership with Victoria, Oak Bay, and Saanich. How we can look at the success of that and broaden it to include the McPherson as well. Randy's pointed out a couple of times about how that could work and what the advantages might be. And so what we're really coming to all of you, we've been now to almost all of our colleagues around the region, and that wasn't preferential, it was all about opportunities and when they told us we could come. And we really want to try and ask you whether you'll be willing, and we hope you will because you've been so instrumental in making the success of the Royal work, to continue to have a conversation with us about what we might actually do to bring the alignment of the theatres together. So what we're anticipating happening next, we have 3 more municipalities to visit. We'll be finished by about the middle of June. What we're hoping is to get from each of you, and so far we've been successful with every presentation we've had, is an agreement for you to continue to be part of an ongoing conversation about what the next steps could be. We don't know yet what that might look like. It might be something that is a tighter conversation with perhaps a representative of your council and community. It might be something that involves a number of different meetings and brainstorming sessions, which we would hope would come out with an actual work plan that we could then bring back to you. Regardless of that, we will come back to you around the middle end of June and give you a summary of what we've heard so that you can hear what your colleagues, how your colleagues have commented on it. And I think it's important for me to say that although we have an idea in mind because we've seen the success of the Royal model, we're not convinced at this point that we have the answer. And we're really asking for your participation in creating those answers and providing your advice based upon your own experience, your own priorities, about where we can take the theatres in the future to make them more efficient, to make them increase the capacity that they've demonstrated in the past, and to really become a joint resource for the region in that incubator model that Randy spoke about, but also as being able to provide the showcase of performance diversity that we've seen throughout the two of them. So really all we're asking you this evening is to hear what we've said, think about it for a bit. What we're hoping is that you'll indicate your preference to continue to be part of the conversation. It will likely go into the fall, and that we're hoping that by the end of the fall that we'll be in a position to make some strong recommendations to all of the councils that have participated, as well as the Capital Regional District, in time for them to look at their budgeting for next year and the years following. So I think I'll leave it at that and then turn it over to you for questions, many of which I believe will likely be answered by Randy.
All right. Thank you very much. Really appreciate your presentation and very informative. Maybe Randy should be here. My question, and I'll start it off, and then maybe a comment addressed to you, Councillor Alto. My question is, you referred to the CRD owning the Royal. Now, in 1974, when the Royal was going to be torn down or threatened to be torn down, Oak Bay, as you mentioned, Saanich and Victoria came forward and bought the place, in essence. So is it does the CRD have the power to sell it if it wants without our permission? I didn't think so. I think we still have and can still be considered an owner of those premises. So we've transferred the kind of the right to administer and run it, but if it would ever be sold, the money would at some point, no doubt, be returned to us. Just want to clarify that because it sounds like we just transferred to the CRD without any valuable consideration, and I don't recall ever doing that.
I would stand corrected with my colleague, Councillor Maddox, but it's my understanding that it's kind of like a use permission.
That's right.
Similarly to how we deal with school districts. I don't imagine it would be possible in any stretch of the imagination for it to be sold as an asset without permission of the three owners, or of the three operators. And so it's kind of a strange circumstance, and that's actually one of the reasons why we're having this conversation, because it's really easy to look at how the Royal works and see its success. It's a bit more murky when you look at the MAC, and when you look at them together, then you have questions like that, which we really need to resolve. We think that the two theaters together are an extraordinary resource, but they could be operated and managed much more efficiently, and that's why we're before you tonight.
So my next comment is, and comments, last question to you, Councillor, and that is, you're not really expecting a decision tonight from us, but as this thing rolls out, whatever this thing is, because you're again kind of looking at the process, would we be invited to send a representative? I know we already have a representative on the board of directors, but this is more kind of a brainstorming, almost task force.
Yes.
So that's something that you would come back to us once you've kind of got a better idea of what the framework going forward will be.
Yes, and I think I'd almost want to suggest that we're one step behind that, and there is a question before you tonight, and it's that one. It's whether or not you actually want to be part of the ongoing conversation. And the first part of the conversation is, what's the process look like? So we would rather not come back to you with a finished process product and say, do you want to join in? We would actually rather hear whether or not you want to be part of the process in general and have you help us create that process so that you're actually in it from the ground up. Most of the other, in fact, all of the other municipalities that we've dealt with so far have actually, that night, as in tonight, have actually said yes to, we're interested. That doesn't commit you to anything. I want to be really clear, we're not asking for money. We're not even asking tonight for you to say specifically that you want person X to be part of process Y. What we're really saying is this a conversation that interests you, particularly with Oak Bay, because you've been such great partners in the past? We hope it does. And if the answer to that question is yes, we're interested in the conversation, then we'll come back to you with a report out from what we've heard from the other municipalities, and then a suggestion for how we move forward, and a further request for your participation.
Good. So if at the end of this anyone feels that we should participate in the conversation, we certainly, as you, since 1974, we've been a very direct participant and investor. That's how I see our role, investor in the Royal, but not in McPherson. So at that, once we have all our questions and comments, then we can see if there's a motion to participate. All right, let's see if you want to start at one side and go around the other, or let's just see who wants to ask questions or make comments. All right. Okay, Councillor Kirby and then Councillor Murdoch, then please.
I was just going to bring the motion straight away to participate in the process, because I see this as an excellent opportunity to collaborate on the success, and given that we have such a, maybe I should just wait for a seconder for that motion.
Second.
Thanks.
Okay.
And then may I speak to my motion?
Yeah, those are a couple of roles that I normally have as chair, but thanks for the assistance tonight. I call on Councillor Kirby to speak to this motion. Go ahead.
Sorry. But given that the process sounds like it's a collaborative effort, and that's how we find the best success, is if we start from the very beginning together. And I think we've shown that we can collaborate well on these theaters already, and obviously there's huge interest and support from the residents of Oak Bay in the success of these theaters. And then given that we have added our own theater to the mix, which is an even smaller version of those two, as a seedling for future theatrics.
It's a controlling metaphor, I think some people would say.
Had to throw it in there, but yeah, I think this is a great effort, and I would expect that we would definitely participate.
Yeah, and it shouldn't be lost that we invested $1 million into that absolutely great community theater. Councillor Murdoch, please.
Thank you, Mayor. And yeah, I think you're asking if we want to have some say in the house that we partially own. I think that's probably a pretty easy yes for all of us at council. I think I would just take this opportunity just to give a little bit of feedback in terms of what I think would be helpful for the broader community, because These kind of regional arts initiatives are fantastic, and I think they're incredibly important, and they need to span multiple jurisdictions and so forth for the funding. I don't know that it's as simple as just expanding ownership models. I think I would like to see a compelling argument why the ownership model, when you have a single society controlling it, changes that vision, because it looks to me more like the hours of use and so forth are the contributing factors. That the operational subsidies are quite a bit higher. I think they're 350,000 versus 100,000 for the Royal, so quite a lot more for the McPherson. And it's a tough sell, frankly, when you come to people and say, we're hemorrhaging large amounts of money. Would you like to invest in this proposition? It's a difficult one for us to say yes to, frankly. So I think that's going to be the need. How do we get there? What do we actually see as a success model? Absolutely, we should take part in that conversation. I think you'd have a unanimous buy-in that we want to see that regional arts support from this community. I've heard already from all the other communities as well. In principle, it's there. The question's really probably around the details of what is the business model going to look like? How do we get to the point where it's not losing that kind of money and actually being used more and has a model that is actually seen? Because I know it's a funny fit, right, in terms of size. A lot of the productions are the lower floor only, not the top floor. There's a lot of that sort of use that is sort of maybe not tied to the best use of that facility. So how do we get there is probably the bigger questions. But yeah, absolutely support the motion. Look forward to the conversation. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Murdoch, thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Braithwaite, please.
Yeah, just to reiterate some of those comments. And then I think one of the interesting things will be, and I look with interest to the slide that you have that shows the array of theaters that we have in our community already. And it'll be interesting to see if one of those theaters, the McPherson or the Royal, is actually needed within the community. So that'll be a very interesting part of the conversation. So I look forward to that.
Okay, thank you. Any other speakers? If not, I'm going to call the question. And the question really is that we would like to participate in the conversation, being shareholders and very interested, in very high percentage of our of your audience comes actually from Oak Bay. I think you referred to that. All right. All in favor? Opposed? Not opposed. That's unanimous. Thank you very much. We look forward to hearing back from you. And I assume at this point, what I would do is I would canvass what who on council might be interested in doing that, and I'll do that over the next few days, so we'll be ready. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your presentation, very informative. And Councillor Madoff, this is your first time. We invite you back often. We meet here almost every Monday night, and it gets about this exciting every Monday night, so we might see you back here.
Well, it's a lovely way to spend the evening. Thank you.
We feel that way. Thank you very much.
I think you've planted a seed.
But I'm pumped. Okay, thank you. I think we're going to shut off the television now. And we'll continue with the purchase of public art. That's number 8 on our agenda. Ms. Barclay is here as the Deputy Director of Parks, Recreation, and Culture. And we have a memo from the department from Mr. Herman. And you can see there that talks about last year's the 2016 Arts Alive program that we all know was received very well by our residents, our visitors, and our businesses. In fact, having spoken to a number of businesses, they felt that business on the avenue improved, and they attributed it directly to the arts program. It's been very successful. We're launching another one, but part of what we were intending throughout this was to look at purchases, so we build up our public art inventory. So, Ms. Barclay, can you kind of walk us through what the recommendation and why? Please, thank you.
Yeah, so last summer, as you were saying, there was the 13 temporary art installations, and the Arts Laureate included a public participation component where the citizens could vote on their preferred piece of art. The one that received the most votes was the Sleeping Giants, and both she and the Public Art Selection Committee are recommending the purchase of that. the Public Art Fund, which is made up of donations from the public, and there was some funds added last year that were surplus. There's more than enough money in the fund to purchase the art. And the art would remain where it is. You know, in future years, should we have lots of art and want to move things around, that'd be a different discussion to come before council.
Thank you very much. And this would effectively be our third acquisition. We have the entrance piece of art at Oak Bay and Foul Bay, and we have the Oak Bay Marine parking lot, the Salish Sea, if I'm not mistaken. So
That's correct.
this would be our third if we decide to proceed here. Any questions from Ms. Barclay, please? Go ahead, please. Councillor Kirby and Councillor Murdoch.
I was just wondering how far behind the other pieces were in the voting or the public public support for the other pieces.
There was another piece of art that was quite close, and that was the Hunt, which is located on Beach Drive in Queen's Park. And the committee is also, because it was equally as popular, not quite as much, like it has a few votes short, they're also fundraising for that piece as well.
Thank you.
Yep, I think we're going to hear more about that in the future. I think the Arts Laureate and the committee she works with are nearing now completion of their efforts to see if we can acquire an extra piece this year. Councillor Murdoch, please.
It was related to that same piece. My preference would be actually that piece over the piece that we're having here, but I'm okay with this as a selection.
Okay.
I am, obviously, whenever there's a piece that's going to be on Oak Bay Avenue where we have night markets and we're asking people to fill in forms and so forth, their natural, I think, predilection is going to be to select things that they see and know about. So I think it's it's good for that. There's that oversight committee to give some recommendations and so forth as to the best choices, especially as we spread out beyond the village. But I'm quite happy to support the motion as it is right now.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a motion? Let's have a
Move
motion.
the recommendation.
Okay, move the recommendation. That is to acquire the piece. Thank you. Further discussion? Seeing none, going to call a question. All in favor? Opposed? None opposed? We have our third piece of public art, and it's very exciting. I get a lot of questions from tourists as to the concern that they have as they approach it, that the squirrel may come back to reclaim those acorns, but I assure them that it came on a different route. So thank you very much. Number 9, that is grant opportunity, strategic priorities fund. I'm going to turn it over in a minute to Mr. Horan. And in your overview, Mr. Horan, I know, I think he's gone. Mr. Sultanum, I think, is gone. He raised an issue about a separate application to, I think it's called the capacity building stream. So there's really 2 streams here, the capital, which you're recommending that we put 2 applications in for, as is set out in your report. And then there's the other stream, which is the capacity building stream. So if you could weave in, the question is, was that considered? And if so, what was the thinking and why is it not being recommended at this time? Now, see Mr. Sultanan back. I hopefully heard all of that intro. Mr. Horan, over to you.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Indeed, the Strategic Priorities Fund is a subset of the Federal Gas Tax Fund, which allows municipalities to apply for grants, in this case up to $6 million, to address national objectives of productivity, economic growth, clean environment, and strong cities and communities. Indeed, there are 2 streams. Municipality can do up to 3 applications. One is the capacity building stream, which is for asset management, infrastructure planning, sustainability planning, and a capital infrastructure project stream, which is for as it's called. When it comes to this particular grant opportunity, staff as a whole, the directors looked at all the available projects that could be targeted for this grant opportunity, and balanced the level of effort for the application versus the shelf-ready status of each individual project, and tried to maximize effort put into the applications versus likelihood of success for achieving the grants, which is why we came forward with the recommendations for the 2 projects.
And can you address maybe a subsidiary issue that it's not just one intake period. It's you know, it's a kind of a revolving grant, as I understand it. There's one period now which ends June the 1st, but is there other periods where we can submit?
I don't have the specific
Okay.
answer to that. I
All
know
right.
there is the federal gas tax fund as overall as a program. There's cyclical deadlines for this specific. In my experience, I don't know of the next
All right.
strategic priority funds intake.
Okay. And would we have been in a position to put something in for capacity building stream at this juncture?
In terms of asset management, the asset management portion of potential projects, yeah, we indeed looked at that as a potential, but we're at the stage of the game in that project where there's some work to do from the staff perspective to narrow down the next steps, the next actions, as opposed to spending time asking, requesting funding for more planning activity. We have to do some work to better capture what it is that we'll be asking for.
Okay. Ms. Koning,
Just as a follow-up, so these particular grant applications kind of come to us very quickly, and so we had council's priorities, which were just approved, and so that was one of the driving forces in terms of we had 2 shelf-ready projects, the upland sewer separation, and we had through the Parks and Recreation in terms of their application. So the fact that we have very short time frames, we had to choose in terms of where was our best effort in terms of information that we had. Staff continues to look for grant applications, and I think this is probably an appropriate time for me to just give council just a brief overview. We actually have somebody that we are just doing a small contract with to look for those applications and to take all of council's priorities and begin to start looking at targeting specific grant opportunities. That doesn't mean that they will happen, but that's sort of the effort, with the priorities being the ones that are on the list for council. Because just when you get the applications and the grant funding, as we just saw, that becomes also the work that needs to be delivered, and in particular, some very short time frames.
okay. Thank you very much. Now let's see if there's any questions for Mr. Haran or Ms. Koning for that matter. I don't see any. Councillor Murdoch, please.
I guess I
Question.
would just, that was actually going to be my question, was on that stream, and I saw the letter that came in, and of course, Mr. Sultanum spoke to it. I think, I mean, certainly from my perspective, you know, we have a lot of things that are sort of soft, right? We have the finance system updates that are sort of being postponed a little bit because of cost and complexity and so forth, and you know, anything we can do to kind of speed those things along, because they all impact our ability to plan. And I was also thinking about, you know, in terms of the possibility of getting to the zoning bylaws of the housing plan and so forth. Those are all things that we can get to with some financial assistance would help a lot. So I'll leave it at that. I have reasonable faith that the staff is looking at all those, and I really appreciate your comments as to where they're at. But I did want to sort of reiterate that I think it's worth seeking those out, because they're often the hardest ones to fulfill, because they're sort of more nebulous in what we're asking for, but I think they are worthwhile because they're often quite expensive. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments? Yes, go ahead, Councillor Zalka. And then we'd need a motion, please.
Thank you, Chair. I would echo the comments from Councillor Murdoch. Moving forward with a capacity building stream sooner instead of later, I think would definitely Oak Bay would benefit from. And at the appropriate time, when we move the 2 motions, I will be moving a 3rd motion at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Thank you. So there is a suggestion that we separate the motions, and it'd be easier when it comes down to actually submitting a copy of the motion along with the grant.
So I'll move motion item number 1, that staff be authorized on behalf of the District of Oak Bay to submit an application, Federal Gas Tax Fund, to complete the Humber Catchment construction phases.
Thank you very much. Moved and seconded. Thank you. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Thank you.
I move the second that the staff be directed to submit applications on behalf of the District of Oak Bay for the Strategic Priorities Fund grant in order to complete the Oak Bay Recreation Center Energy Recovery Project.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? None opposed. So this would be the time that I would otherwise move on to the next item. Councillor Zalka, should you wish to
Thank you, Chair.
have a third.
propose a motion and see if it gets a second. I propose a motion to the staff be directed to submit an application to fund, how would I say this, the federal gas tax fund with respect to capacity building, I think is what it's referred to, capacity building stream for an appropriate project to be chosen by staff.
I'll second it for discussion.
Okay, this moves now on the floor. Okay, we have heard from Mr. Aran. I don't know if either Mr. Aran or Ms. Koenig want to comment from a staff point of view on this issue. Are we in a position to even comply with the motion if it passes?
Certainly, Your Worship, staff would always try to look for opportunities. It's an issue in terms of we have very short time frame. We're at the 23rd of May, and the applications, I think, need to be submitted by June the 1st. And I think our efforts are on the first two that we have. If that's what the direction is from council, staff will endeavor to do that. That means that probably something else will be delayed.
Someone had mentioned, I don't know if it was you or might have been you, mentioned shovel ready. So the two motions we passed, I assume, were shovel ready. Now, capacity building doesn't use a shovel, but in the parlance of the day, is it shovel ready?
I think as Mr. Hand was indicating, and I was suggesting, it is something that we need to look at. I don't know that we are completely ready. What I could suggest to council is we would do our best effort between now and June the 1st. I can't guarantee that that will happen. So if you put a resolution forward, it's a matter of staff doing that work. And again, as I said, it would probably be delaying something else.
Okay, speaking of the motion now, Councillor Zelka, you moved it.
Thank you so much, Chair. Since this is for relatively soft targets, don't necessarily actually have a shovel, I know we have a number of IT software purchases and other systems that need to be put in place, so we know that are aging. We know we have infrastructure issues within not only the building, but within our systems. I would hope that some of those could be considered shovel ready, even if they are relatively small, and at a best efforts basis from a staff perspective, I would be fine with that.
Thank you. Councillor Murdoch, and then Braithwaite, please.
Just so for the record, I agree with the intent of this motion, but I don't actually feel comfortable with the wording of it. I don't think we could direct staff to do this. I think you can't go forward and apply for these grants without council authorization, essentially. So I'd feel much more comfortable just leaving this as authorizing staff to submit one under this capacity building stream, should they find a means of doing so in the next couple of weeks. I don't think we can direct them. I have a feeling that they may not be able to come up with something in the next 2 weeks, but I think if they did find something, they wouldn't have time to come back to us. So I think if we change the motion to say we authorize them to do it and let them go and find it, I'd feel comfortable with that motion and not with the direct them to submit an application. So I'm not sure if you're amenable to a motion to amend.
If the chair is open to a friendly amendment, I'm open to that.
Okay, we're just going to have not a friendly amendment, we're going to have a real amendment. Ms. Koenig?
I think that one of the issues that we need to consider is the motion also that's going to meet the requirements of the grant application, just as the two that you just moved. That's actually what they're looking for, so you need to be a little more specific, I think. And so that's part of our dilemma as we're moving forward.
So right now, it's a direction. That's the motion on the floor. And if anyone wants to amend it, it can. I should just say, you said 2 weeks? My calculation, it's 1 week. They're due next, what is it tonight, Tuesday? Next Tuesday. So that's 1 week. So, and okay, just wanted to correct that. So 2 weeks might have been different, but so yes, I entertain a motion to amend.
My motion to amend would be to change the wording to authorize staff to apply for a grant under the capacity building stream. Should and leave it to their discretion if they can find when to apply.
Sorry, say that more slowly, the last phrase.
Actually, I think we'll just leave it at the first part. We'll authorize staff to apply for a grant under the capacity building stream at their discretion. Is that?
I think
Maybe
that's
I
what
just
we
say-
wanted to be more specific about.
Yeah, just something that said for asset management, something.
Okay, related to asset
Yeah,
management
yeah.
or other internal services.
Okay, so it's, the amendment is now on the floor to amend the first motion. Speaking to the amendment, please. Okay? Yes, go ahead, please. The amendment.
I'm not sure, sorry.
Okay? So I see no hands for the speak to the amendment. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, none opposed. Now it's amended. It gives authority and no more at this point with discretion. So discussions? Yes, thank you.
I just wanted to express that I don't, I think we heard from staff that they chose not to apply for this at this time because they don't feel prepared to apply for them. And I think we need to respect that staff have weighed these options and recognize the importance of the asset management plan and the desire. I think that they have a strong desire as well to implement changes and move forward on work that we have set out. So I feel uncomfortable supporting the motion, given that they've just told us that they don't really have the time or the staff capacity to do so at this time.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Braithwaite, please.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that. However, I think that we'll leave it up to staff at this point in time. But I think what I did hear staff say was that these grants are available every year, and so we could actually have something ready for next year under the capacity grant stream. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's sort of the broader picture of the conversation we had earlier. We're always looking, whether it's this or something else.
Okay, any other speakers? I take the point that was made by Councillor Kirby. We've heard fairly clearly that the staff had considered it and really felt we're not ready. And for us to put, say, in the next 6 days, 2 of which are weekend days, is you come up with an idea, so it's shovel ready. I would prefer to go forward with a well thought out application that reflects where we are in our planning process. I heard Mr. Horan say there's other pieces that need to fall into place, and we're not there yet. And for us to ask that they fall into place in the next 4 working days, I think is unfair and unrealistic. And I think we should put our best efforts on the 2 big ones. If we get one or both, it would be just an amazing coup. This other one, no doubt, would be in the range of 100 to 200,000. That's just a guess on my part, and I don't think we should go and proceed to an application unless staff are confident that they're not ready. That they're ready, I should say. And I heard loud and clear that they're not ready at this point. And to demand that they be ready in 4 days, I think puts too much pressure on them. I'm not going to support it. Thank you. Any other comments? All in favor? Oh, go ahead.
I would just add, I don't disagree. I don't want to put the staff in a position of having to do anything here. I think the reason for the amendment was just to give them the authorization if they relook at this, hearing what's been said here tonight and see an opportunity. It grants them that without. Nobody's going to hold anything against them if they don't apply, and if they find something, that's just a bonus. So I'm okay with the motion as it stands.
Councillor Zalko.
I'm okay with the motion as it stands. If an opportunity does present itself, it would avoid us having to have another meeting. I don't see any harm in proceeding with this opportunity. And if the money's on the table and we have an opportunity to have it and reduce our taxes, I'd like to go for it.
Thank you. Anything else? Councillor Croft, please.
I won't be supporting the amendment because from
This is
my
the amendment, it's the main motion.
The main motion,
Yes,
I won't be supporting the main motion because from my experience, if you don't have a plan, you don't get funding. So we're working on our strategic priorities, of which we have an asset management plan. When we have the plan that we approve, then I could see the opportunity to apply for funding.
Thank you. Okay, ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? It's myself, Councillor Croft, Councillor Kirby opposed. It fails on a tie. Thank you. Number 10, request for financial assistance, ride, don't hide. We do have Ms. de Montmorency here. Welcome, and we have your request in front of us. And this is from the Canadian Mental Health Association with respect to us defraying by way of grant the police marshalling costs for the Ride Don't Hide event, which will occur on June the 25th, 2017. Let me just hit the right button here. We have your correspondence, which you forwarded, and we have before us. Do you have anything to add in particular? Because we have your correspondence.
Okay, great. I just wanted to actually thank all of you for your tremendous support of the ride last year, for not only, allowing us to have the in-kind sponsorship, but for actually getting out there and raising funds and riding. It was tremendous, and I thank all of you very much for that.
Thank you.
I'll move the motion that the grant be approved for police marshalling costs related to the Ride Don't Hide event on June 25th.
Second.
Moved, seconded. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed?
Wonderful.
None opposed. Thank you very much, and all the best with the ride. Unfortunately, myself and Councillor Croft will be riding on the shores of Denmark at that time on a biking trip. You can send us pictures and we'll exchange. Okay. So all the best with the ride. I know it was a great success last year. The next item is item number 11. This is correspondence from the CRD about the foreign purchasers property transfer tax. You'll see there that there was a motion put to the CRD board, writing, suggesting that the chair of the CRD write to the province, requesting that should the percentage of foreign purchasers in the region be 10% or more for 2 consecutive months, that the province immediately introduce a 15% additional property transfer tax to ensure a level playing field among the 3 least affordable regions in the country. And that was, in essence, the consideration of that, and the vote on that at CRD was postponed, so it can be circulated to the council. So we have a number of options. One would be to receive it with thanks, and another would be to receive it with comments, yes, that would be essentially it. Comments could be opposed, supportive, or neutral. So let's have a conversation before we have the motion. And I could, or maybe, I don't know if people wanted to know what I said at the CRD. There was 2 concerns I had. One, it was brought, as you can see there, on April the 12th, leading into an election. I thought the timing was inappropriate because it might be, if it was passed, it might be used as a political football, which we should not get in the middle of this discussion. Secondly, I said I would unlikely to support it at the CRD because we just don't have sufficient information as to the effect of this tax in Vancouver. And it just, I think we've had less than a year's experience, and so far there really hasn't been any analysis of the outcome. So I wasn't comfortable with it, and that was, I think, the case with the majority of the CRD at the time, and that's why this was a kind of fallback position. Let's not decide now. Let's find what people have to say. I know it's been circulated to other councils. Some have just received it, I understand. But in any event, this was a motion. It came from the City of Victoria. Okay, that's where I stood on it. Yes, Councillor Kirby, please.
I would just echo those comments that I'd like to see some evidence from the Vancouver market, whether that's had any effect on, I mean, I think we've heard media reports that suggest that there's been some cooling effect, but I don't know that we have any empirical evidence to support it yet. And also, I'd like to know, have some evidence suggesting that there is a foreign ownership, a sufficient component of our market that is foreign ownership. I mean, I think we may, it's also been suggested anecdotally in the media that this this exists, this element to the rising housing rates in our region, but I don't know that we know that for sure, and it could be just the pressure of 3,000 people moving to the region every year, and not having had a development community respond adequately with proposals for new development. So I don't know that that's the answer, and I'd like to see more evidence gathered and more information provided, just especially as far as the foreign ownership component of Oak Bay's own municipality.
Okay, thank you very much. And I should say, when this came to the CRD table, there was no staff report. There was no analysis from our staff of the Vancouver experience. Councillor Murdoch, please.
Thank you, Chair. I did find the statistics from Metro Vancouver pre and post in terms of foreign ownership interesting. They certainly dropped off as soon as they brought it in. However, I am not convinced that that's a goal that we should be setting. I mean, we're trying to attract people from all over the world to come work here. Being a foreign national does not mean anything negative at all, frankly, and I think it kind of plays into the wrong message. Certainly have major concerns about absentee ownership, whether Canadian or foreign, and I think that's a totally different question that does not address in any way, shape, or form. So I think there's enough evidence here for us to move forward with this in terms of a recommendation. At this point, I'd be just prepared to receive for information. So that's my motion.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Further discussion? No further discussion. I think one of the reasons it was brought forward in the Vancouver market was to cool the house prices. And we haven't had any analysis of that. We certainly had an analysis in terms of the quote-unquote foreign buyers, but there's also a suggestion that there's just a workaround for some of them. So the goal of reducing the prices is unclear at this point. Yes, Councillor Braithwaite.
Just one comment then. Will they bring that information to us when that information becomes available, and will this come back to us, do you think? Or
there was no mention by the supporters of this motion that that's what they would do. There was no request for the CRD staff to bring forward analysis. I think the hope was that at some point the province would analyze what the effect of their legislation had on the market. And I haven't seen, I may have missed it, but I haven't seen anything come forward with a full analysis. I think there's been information about the number of foreign buyers, but would we here in Victoria call people who are cashing out in Vancouver and driving up our market, would we call them foreign buyers? Because certainly in my visits to the welcome wagon that I do, I see a significant number of people who are coming from the Toronto and the Vancouver market who are doing just that. They're looking for a great place to live. They find it here in Oak Bay, and our house prices by comparison are significantly lower than Vancouver. So you can get more house for a lot less money. So, so I don't think this kind of legislation would capture that, and it would be unconstitutional, no doubt. So, Councillor Zalka, please.
Thank you so much, Chair. Having married into a Chinese family, from an anecdotal perspective, I get to learn quite a fair bit about cultures and some of the different perspectives from other countries, other places around the world. My relatives tell me that Canada, in general, is a bit crazy for not doing what is done in other countries, which is to control the inflows and outflows of money, as is done in Singapore, as is done in Hong Kong, as they attempt to do in some other countries where I understand in about 2015, the country of China recently, as a member of the World Trade Organization, had to agree to allow outflows of money from their country, and that resulted in quite large outflows that many around the world are again, anecdotally, feel there's an effect from those flows of money. There was a wonderful article in the Mother Jones that was circulated, trying to describe the various impacts of these very large funds, whether it's in Seattle or Vancouver or Toronto or some of fears of our neighbors that is or is going to be happening here in Victoria. I prefer working from a place of evidence. I do look forward to maybe this information coming back once we have a better idea, maybe once the province has a very good idea of what's happening across the province from a trend perspective. And I'm glad that they finally changed the rules to allow the nationality of all the purchases to now be collected. I hope that wasn't just in Victoria. I wasn't sure whether that was across the province. So I'll be voting against the motion because I think it would be useful to at least keep this on the table and to at least show some support for this sort of initiative. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? If not, I'm going to call a question that is to receive this, which effectively is to do nothing at this point. All in favor? Opposed? Councillor Zelko opposed. Passes. Thank you very much. Number 13, Oak Bay Heritage Commission minutes.
You skipped one.
Minutes of the...
You skipped 12.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, you're right. I apologize. My iPad went up a little quickly. Okay, so that's the CRD bylaw. This is a request to consent to a bylaw which would, in essence, change the bylaw at the CRD to allow in essence, a scholarship program to be developed, and there's information about that scholarship, and it would be given a name in honor of the constable who was killed in the Western Communities not very long ago, Beckett, I think. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. This is really a question for you, probably. Do you know if the CRD regularly, do they administer scholarships and so forth in general, or is this a new initiative for them?
I know of at least, I don't know about this case. I would think this comes out of the Traffic Safety Commission, that they were the ones who would recommend this annually. And I know there was other bursaries. So I don't think we have the same ability to administer scholarships and bursaries like University of Victoria, but there are very few. So I don't think it's become a burden on the CRD. I don't know if staff have any insights into that.
I do know from my past experiences, there are a number of municipalities that may do it. It's one or two things that they've carried on for several years. They're not in the business of doing full-scale scholarships, bursaries.
And we do have some monies that we set, I think it was called a Centennial Scholarship. Yeah, we do. That is, in essence, administered by the University of Victoria.
I guess my reason for my question is just, I don't have any objection to this in general, but if this is, the CRD has no shy ways of spending money, and if this is sort of, they start opening up bursaries as a standard thing of pieces, if there's something that they do currently and they're just adding this to a limited number of them, I'm quite supportive of it. If it's sort of opening the door to a whole new level, I'm not quite so keen on it. But it sounds like from what you said, they actually do administer a number of other bursaries. And
they're very infrequent, and we learn about them when the recipient is recognized at the CRD table, which is just a couple of times a year, I would think. So I don't recall any more than that. At least recognized at the CRD table.
I'd move approval of the request.
Yep, and that's a consent to that bylaw. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, discussion. All in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Now, number 13, which is the Heritage Commission minutes of the 6th and 11th of April.
Move receipt.
Thank you. Discussion. As our liaison, is there something you wanted to highlight in any of those minutes?
No, I would, I think, just like to thank staff for completing the heritage brochures that we have for applications for heritage designation and registration, which are complete now and lovely, and they did a great job on it. So they're going to be now available to sort of increase awareness at the night markets and other places that the Heritage Foundation and Commission are going to be doing their work. So just thank you very much for that. And they are undertaking sort of a small review or annual work plan to kind of re-examine what they're doing, and are they doing things efficiently, and are there recommendations for some changes sort of structurally within that group that would make them more effective long term. So that's it's happening over a number of meetings, so that's going to probably result in some sort of report that I imagine will make its way back to council at some point.
Good, thank you very much. Anything else on that? So we're here to receive it. All in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Number 14 is a correspondence relating to other items that we're going to be speaking about.
Move
We need
receipt.
to receive those. Thank
Second.
you. Moved and seconded. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Thank you. We have new business and verbal reports. Any new business? Yes, Councillor Kirby, please.
In keeping with our strategic priorities protocol, I want to respond to the many speakers we heard this evening with regards to seedlings daycare and the use of the auxiliary building. I think we've heard a strong case in support of some change to the bylaw, but given that we have that strategic priorities protocol where we must put things onto the strategic priorities list before any action can be taken. I'm just wondering if I could get some direction from staff on exactly what kind of motion I could bring forward to get this moving forward or get it put onto the list of strategic priorities.
Ms. Koenig, do you have suggested wording, just so we can get a report back from staff?
Just give me 1 second.
Okay.
I had suggested something like to bring a report back to council before, it would to lead it towards the strategic priority session, but I'm not sure that that's the order of things, whether it needs to go to a strategic priority session before a report can be written, or does the report get written to be put on the strategic priorities session?
Let me start with this. So this is the first time we're doing this, and I'm very pleased that council is kind of going through this process. So prior to any final decision or motion being made by council, that they give an opportunity for the Chief Administrative Officer to bring back a report to council, so that it could actually consider things like if there are staff implications, budgetary, just a work plan, because in consultation, bylaws generally have consultation, so those kinds of processes. So I could bring something back for council's consideration.
Okay. So it's really
All
in
right.
keeping with that protocol, asking staff for a report pursuant to that protocol on this issue. Is that your motion?
Yes, just like that.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Ms. Jones? Sorry,
Is
I
that
spoke.
okay?
Is that good? Okay, you captured it. Thank
Got
you
it.
very much.
Did everybody else capture it?
Pardon me?
I said, did everybody else capture it? And then is there a seconder?
Okay. Well, why don't I ask that question? Is there a seconder?
I second it.
Seconded. Okay, now the motion is on the floor and ready for debate. Councillor Braithwaite, please.
Just so I think, because sometimes our process can be confusing, especially to people in the audience, perhaps an explanation on how that actually works. So bylaws can't be changed at the drop of a hat. They do have to go through a specific process, and sometimes that process can be drawn out and can take longer than people might expect. So I'm just kind of forewarning you that even if we go down the road of looking for a report, et cetera, that it's not going to be something that happens overnight, really. So I think that's the only comment I'd like to make.
I think the Blues have met with, I know they met with me a month or so ago, and they met with staff, and I think I think we both, myself and staff, have made that clear that this is an involved process. So, okay, you seconded it, I think. You seconded it. Did you want to speak to it, or? Okay, Councillor Murdoch, were you?
Just two quick things on it, because I do support the motion. I think one, just part of that report, I would like to know, there was some in a letter submitted, just some comment that there was a contravention sort of between what VHA's regulatory framework is versus our bylaws in terms of best practice. That would be a very important thing for us to understand in the context. And the second, I guess, does this motion impact things like enforcement? So in the process of considering this, does it change the nature of how, I know when we had the marina at one point, we should have essentially just suspended the enforcement of the bylaw until such time as we consider the bylaw in full at a future date. Does that have any impact on it at this point, or does that, this kind of motion? Or does that require something more specific And I'm not going to make that today, for sure.
And I know I've been in conversation with Mr. Jones, Mr. Warren Jones, about this, and that is something when we get the report back, I think there may be a discussion of or points made as to what would happen in the interim. We'll get a sense. I mean, it may be when we get the report back, we decide not to go down that road, but if we do, what do we do in the interim? And I think Mr. Jones told me he would be prepared to, to address that in the report. I think that's important.
But that means that in between that time and now, that the bylaw has to be followed as it's written.
Well, I think given that the ball has started rolling, I think we would expect our staff to exercise appropriate discretion, knowing that we might be going down this road, and particularly depending on the vote and how supportive council is on something like this. Okay? Councillor Zelka, please.
Thank you, Chair. Being in new business, is this a notice of motion or is this something else? I just wanted to clarify in terms of procedure.
No, this is a motion, and so I think it's appropriate given what we heard tonight. But if you feel that that it should be a notice of motion, then I think what you would do is you would ask for it to be tabled and treated as a notice, and we'll come back to it on the 12th of June.
This is the first I've heard of this, so I haven't had a chance to do any sort of research of my own to get ready for this. So
there was a document circulated to everybody from the Blues that we received, I'd say 2-3 weeks ago. I think initially the thinking was that they would be here 2 weeks ago, I think, at our council meeting, and then we thought that it was a very heavy council meeting and they should come now. And at that point, I think it was Mr. Jones who circulated the report that we got, so that hopefully you had a chance to look at that. But
unfortunately, I may have missed that.
Okay.
May have been the meeting that I missed. So I would propose that this be tabled as a notice of motion, please.
Okay.
Thank you. Move a motion, I guess, as a tabling?
No, it's a tabling motion.
Tabling motion.
That's right. Okay, there's no seconder. I heard no seconder. So we'll move on. Now we're ready for the question. Yes. On the substantive question, to ask for a report back.
So then on the report back, is what's being asked then for a work plan, or will we be getting information about the parking issues, all of the ramifications with respect to changing zoning, the commercial aspects of this? I just wanted to know what is going to be coming back. I just want to know what I'm voting on. Thank you.
Okay, my sense is, and again, speaking with Ms. Jones, the first report would be very high level, because that's drilling down in terms of all of those issues and the process. That would be a much more involved report. And I don't think we expect that at this point. I think the protocol kind of envisages a high level, can we do this? How does it fit in with our other priorities? Do we need to deflect this for 6 or 12 months? I think that's the nature of what we're asking staff for, Ms. Coney.
You're correct, Your Worship, and so part of this is just to give council an indication if they want staff to be expending time and energy on that in substitution for some other priority of council, or if they do, what the cost of that will be in terms of, do we need other resources? So really it is, we won't be able to contemplate all of those issues. It's the intent to give you sort of an overview of what we think the implications would be and what the period of time would be in terms of if that were the desire of council.
Yep. So the issues you raise are for ones that would be drilled down if we decide and when we decide. Okay. Councillor Zalka, go ahead.
Thank you. So as a follow-up, so I was a stay-at-home father for both of my children, and I understand that this definitely is a concern for all new parents. It was a great concern for my wife and I, for both of our children. And one of the reasons we left Toronto and moved to this wonderful piece of paradise was because we didn't feel we could raise a child in Toronto. And we were fortunate enough to find some excellent daycare. And I was actually, compared to what we had experienced in Toronto, I was amazed how easy it was in comparison to what I had come from. So it doesn't take away from the fact that I hear some people saying that they have difficulties. I absolutely understand that. But at the same time, as a councillor, I had to worry about some of the land use issues that would result with potentially large change in land use perspective that would allow everyone in Oak Bay to basically allow, from a commercial perspective, in terms of the usage of an accessory house. So at this moment, because of our priorities, I will be voting against this, but I know that in our priorities to come in, I believe, next year, we are looking at the zoning. I don't think the zoning made it to number one review for this year for some reason. So, but when it does come forward, probably hopefully next year, I definitely would be supporting something like this. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? Yes, go ahead.
Just
go ahead,
so I'm
Councillor Murdoch.
clear on what it is that we're asking for, we are asking for a report back on the consideration of, this is a legal entity, a home-based business, but currently you can't use the accessory buildings to run that. So that's the consideration here, is the consideration of the use of accessory buildings for a home-based business. Is that essentially correct?
It may be narrower than that for daycare.
Yes, but I think that council needs to realize that this is not just, unless it's just a one-off, right? I think you're looking at, what is that implication? I think, and that's to Councillor Zelka's point.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Kirby,
Given that
ready
I
for the
didn't-
question?
Well, yes, but I didn't speak to the motion, so I
Okay,
just
go
wanted to motivate. I think we heard loud and clear tonight just how important it is to have daycare within your community, so that it's close, you're nearby, it doesn't add further commuting time. You can actually walk or cycle to your daycare, or you're close by, you're within proximity, and certainly that provides a little bit of additional comfort to new parents. I also think that we heard loud and clear as well that there is a daycare crisis, and there was 10 years ago when my children were at that age group as well, and I think we're seeing a population boom, and so there's even more stress on those few spaces that do exist now. Not to mention the accessibility as far as the cost, which I think is become that's why it was part of this provincial election. There was a major platform plank for a lot of people that influence their votes. So I think this is a timely response to an issue that has come up. We need to make room within our council to respond to issues as they come up. We do have a full plate, I understand that, but this is something I think we need to respond to. And I also think allowing this use, when signaling to the community that this is something that we might support, would give other daycares the opportunity to run in a safe, clean, new structure that so that that might relieve some of the stress and pressure on the number of spaces we have in Oak Bay.
Thank you. Councillor Zelka again, please.
Thank you. I appreciate the second opportunity. What frankly scared the heck out of me was to hear that depending on the amount of support this motion gets will determine how much enforcement the current rules get. And when I heard that there's going to be an association in terms of the amount of discretion applied by staff, as mentioned by you, Chair, that convinced me to vote against this.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All in favor? Opposed? Councillor Zelka opposed. Thank you. That was new business. Any more new business? Report from the CRD. There's, well, you saw that we've already dealt with a couple of the issues there. I have no other report. Other verbal reports, and I'm going to ask our YES liaison to update us on the YES Awards.
They happened. No, just kidding.
But it happened so darn well.
Yes, it did. We were able to celebrate 12 wonderful youth within our community at a dinner at the Oak Bay Beach Hotel, and we had the Lieutenant Governor in attendance, and it was just a really great evening for the families, and thanks to everybody on council who attended and were able to sit with some of the youth and chat with them and really get to know them, and it's a great thing to see how wonderful the youth in our community really are. So, and thank you all for coming.
Well, it certainly gives you comfort that our future is in good hands, but one of the things that came out of it, which I really think goes back to its roots, were stories of at least 3 young people who struggled with what I would call, at least in Oak Bay, abnormal adversity that they hadn't created. And when this was first conceived of, we wanted to recognize youths, not just the ones who are always getting the A-pluses and who are getting the scoring championship on the basketballs, ones who often get a significant percentage of the rewards. We wanted to look for youths who had made an exceptional effort and overcome whatever challenge they had. We heard 3 very moving stories, because that was part of the evening, where the stories of the particular youth was read out and their achievements. And I think that really brought it home to all the other parents of, yes, they might have a brilliant kid, but brilliance comes in different packages. And it was a very special night for me. And I think from the Lieutenant Governor, who I spoke to as I escorted her quickly to her car, she was very taken by that too, and really appreciated. And very supportive of all the schools. Many of the principals were there, and the nominators. So just a wonderful 10th anniversary evening. So thank you very much, Councillor Braithwaite, for putting all that together. Now, other verbal reports. Yes, go ahead, Councillor Murdoch.
I'll be very quick. Just wanted to point out that the new overall library guide with all the important information about how to use your library wisely is here, and the programs and events, which has all the summer stuff going on, is now being published. So run to your local library, pick it up. It's fantastic.
Let's have a look at it. Hold it right up. Oh, great. Thank you.
Everything from toddlers and to preteens and teens. In terms of activities, lots of stuff going on. And I think at any given time, there's something like 20 or so events every day inside the library. It's really quite something. And the other question I had for staff, I'm not sure if it's possible to do it at this meeting or maybe just in a future meeting. Is there any updates on the DEAR program status at this time that can be shared with council?
So I actually spoke with the Director of Corporate Services. He just left to go on holidays for the week. So I think there will be something coming shortly. I think there's a number of pieces of activity that have happened just in recent days, and so you'll be hearing something shortly.
I think he wrote to us this afternoon, and I know I'd been asking for an update, and I think that was a couple of 3 weeks ago, and I know he was in the process of gathering some information, so it should be soon.
Yeah, and I believe, Your Worship, that there will be a more sort of formal reporting out at our next council meeting.
Excellent. June the 12th.
That'd be great. Yeah, I think there's certainly public interest, if nothing else.
There very much is. Okay. Any other reports? All right. I see none. We move on to item number 16. And we have calling in by teleconference, Councillor Ney is on the line, is able to join us at this point. Councillor Ney, can you hear me?
I can.
Thank you very much, and we can hear you loud and clear. So we're now on the item 16, where the manager of planning. Could you give us a very high-level overview of what tonight is? I know we've passed the zoning bylaws and we had the public hearing, and so where are we tonight, and what's the purpose of this decision?
Yes, Your Worship, going back to January, Council began its consideration of a proposal to develop a mixed-use multifamily building at the corner of Cadborough Bay Road and Bowker Avenue. Through that process, Council has heard from staff and from the applicant regarding the design of the building, the density that they were looking for, and parking variances related to construction of that building. Council's now adopted the zoning bylaw that would allow for that development to proceed. Tonight's report and the development permit that's attached to the report really speaks to approval of the form and character of the building. It also refers to Council's consideration of the variances required for the parking within the building.
Okay. Any questions from Ms. Jensen? Seeing no questions. The recommendation is that Council approve the application for, and that is the long development number, to allow the construction of a mixed-use commercial and multifamily building on the property collectively known as 2296 Cadborough Bay Road and located at the corner of Cadborough Bay and Bowker. And then this is pursuant to the bylaw which we gave final reading to recently. Okay?
I move the staff recommendation.
Okay,
Second.
moved and seconded. Discussion. This has been discussed a lot, but welcome more discussion. Councillor Braithwaite, please.
Thank you. I do have a quick question in regards to if there's a loading zone associated with this parking plan at all, because in my head, I think about the 59 spots that we're getting, which is less than half of what then it's required by our outdated bylaw, I would say. However, I do notice that they're asking for, or what our bylaws suggest is 18 general commercial parking spaces and 10 restaurant parking spaces, which obviously we're getting 6 commercial parking and 1 visitor parking stall, but no restaurant stalls, so to speak. But my question really is, what happens when the trucks come, as they will, to unload things for the restaurant and for all the different businesses? Does that not take away from parking? I mean, I know in all of the other areas, if you look at Estevan, if you look at Oak Bay Avenue, they have designated loading zones. So I would assume that there should be a designated loading zone for this particular village as well.
Yes, to clarify, interestingly enough, the parking facilities bylaw really speaks to loading zones within the main commercial areas, such as Oak Bay Avenue. For this facility and for some of the other village areas, there's no requirement for a loading zone, so there's we've had nothing in that way considered as part of this development.
If I might?
Yes, go ahead.
That's very interesting, because I think if you talk to the people around Estevan, if you said there's no requirement for a loading zone there, they would have a lot to say about that, and other village areas as well. So it's just a concern of mine that we don't have something specifically for designated as a loading zone, because again, that's going to take spots when there's vehicles there unloading for the restaurant and the different businesses. That's going to take spots that are supposedly designated for commercial spots for people going to the businesses by a big truck unloading. So it's a bit of a concern in my opinion.
Any other questions? Now, I'm going to entertain any submissions from the public, should they wish to speak to this issue. Okay. I think we have a motion on the floor. Ready for the motion? Any comments from you, Councillor Ney? No. Thank you. Ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? Councillor Braithwaite, Councillor Murdoch, and Councillor Zelka is opposed. What is your vote, Councillor Ney?
In favor.
Thank you. Related to that, which is item 16, we would go on to item 19.
Your Worship, I was wondering if we could call the question? Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, I thought I did. What? Oh, so there was 3 people against. I thought I put that on the record. Councillor Murdoch, Councillor Braithwaite, and Councillor Zelka, all others in favor. Okay, sorry, I should have said and motion passes. My apologies. We go right to 19 because 17 is a bylaw. It was a bylaw memorandum. We've already dealt with 18, and 19 is in fact related. This is to do with the Boker Village Housing Agreement bylaw. And this was held last time at the third reading because there was some issue as to what the contents were. We wanted to get an update. Ms. Jensen, could you just kind of put us in the picture where we are with respect to this housing agreement bylaw, please?
Certainly, Council raised some concerns at the last meeting about the housing agreement and giving the strata some more control over how those units will be used into the future. And one of the concerns was potentially units being used for things like Airbnb and short-term accommodation. So staff went back and have been working with our legal counsel to come up with a method to accomplish that. What we've done is incorporate into the definitions a new one for travel accommodation. And so that would specifically refer to temporary overnight lodging of the traveling public. It then goes on through Section 4, travel accommodation, that would specifically prohibit those types of uses within this development.
Okay. Thank you very much. Just, I know you have a question, Councillor Zalko, but procedurally, because of that change, what the recommended steps are is that we have a motion to, in essence, withdraw the first, second, and third reading of that bylaw. If that passes, then we would call a first, second, and third reading on the new proposed bylaw with the new wording. And then we would have to come back another time to adopt it if it passes, right? Have I got that right, Ms. Jones?
Extremely close, Your Worship.
Close.
The motion, to refer the bylaw to this meeting was called before first, second, or third reading was called on this item. So in effect, the motion for first, second, and third is live before council at this time. As the bylaw here is a revised bylaw, withdrawing the motion on the floor would then allow you to consider the current bylaw.
My apologies, and that was a subtle difference I missed. So we have that motion on the floor is essentially where we're at. So we're essentially withdrawing that before voting on it. Thank you for that subtle but important difference. Now, these are questions as opposed to comments, because I'd like a motion on the floor, and then before we have discussion. Question?
Move withdrawal of the original motion.
Okay.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Okay, now, discussion and questions allowed. Go ahead. Councillor Zelko.
I was very impressed with the changes that were brought forward by staff. I very much appreciate it, making it clear that commercial uses of the accommodation is essentially not allowed. And I'd be fine to move first, second, and third reading of the revised
Once we get there?
motion.
Okay. Yep.
Please,
Perfect.
I'd like to move it now if I may.
No, you can't, because right now we have on our agenda that we're withdrawing the motion that's before us, because notionally. As soon as that one's done, then we'll come to you. Right? So essentially, we have to clear the deck of the motion that's before us, which then the motion was for first, second, and third reading. We hadn't passed that. We essentially deferred it for further consideration, which has now been done. So we have a motion to withdraw that motion before us. Are we all on that page? Okay, further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Councillor Ney, what is your vote on that?
In favor.
Thank you. It passes unanimously. Now, Councillor Zelka, the new version then requires first, second, and third reading. Just that you would move first, second, and third reading.
I so move, please.
Okay. Seconder, thank you. Discussion. All in favor? Thank you. Councillor Ney, what is your vote?
In favor.
Thank you very much. It passes unanimously also. It has to come back to council at our next meeting because of the procedural requirements that you can't pass a bylaw one evening. It has to be over two. So a final, or it's often called adoption, will take place June the 12th. We've run out of things to do, so we require a motion to adjourn, please.
Move adjournment.
Seconded.
Moved, seconded. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Councillor Ney, for attending for this matter. Appreciate it. And thank you, everyone, for coming and staying along. And it was definitely a night for seedlings. Thank you.